Hello, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's well. Thank you very much for joining me today on this webinar. And I'm just sorting out my screen share. Give me a moment. So, welcome. So I'm going to jump straight into it today. So this is all around how we can extend project for the web functionality with the Power Platform. So I'm Jack. I'm the head of practice at CPS for business applications. So ultimately, I work very closely with a colleague called Lester, whose team specialize on modern work management tools like Project for the Web and Project Online. And we are involved to extend that functionality where needed. And that can be on things such as pipeline management, it can be enhancing risks, actions, issues, and decisions, so RAID based activities, and also create comprehensive reporting where required. So, what are we? So, first of all, who are CPS? So, CPS are a gold partner. We have specializations and we are a fast track partner as well. So, these are some accreditations that sort of demonstrate we have the appropriate qualifications and accreditations that you may want to work with. And there's an example of some of the customers and procurement channels that you can obtain our services from. So what are we going to cover today? So we're going to cover automation in Microsoft 365. So what tools are actually available to you and how can they be used to extend your work management tools? We're going to look at project for the web licensing and how that licensing can cover you to extend. So are you able to, with your current licensing SKUs, push your productivity more forward? And then we're going to look at real world examples such as Power Automate, Power BI, and Power Apps, and how those tools can actually be used in turn to provide rich experiences to enhance functionality from pipeline management to more comprehensive reporting and also other solutions that may be related to project and portfolio controls. So just to set the scene, what tools do you actually have available within Microsoft 365? So the first thing is the Microsoft Power Platform. So this tool set is ever encompassing and it touches all areas of the Microsoft ecosystem. So whether you're in Outlook, in SharePoint, in Microsoft Teams, in Project for the Web, or even within Power BI, Power Apps, or Power Automate, you are using or have the ability to use Microsoft Power Platform tools. First of all, we have Power BI, so business intelligence tools available to conduct business analytics. So this may be to understand pipeline requests. So it could be based on a priority or a matrix of prioritization that you decide. It could be based on program on project performance. And these can be created to cover different levels of the business also. So whether that's from a C level all the way down to a lower level. And that ultimately goes with a level of detail that is shown and demonstrated. At the top level, typically information is aggregated and KPIs are created. And at the lower level, you want to get into the weeds and understand individual projects, individual portfolios, and why they are performing the way they are. Then we have Power Apps, which is the application development toolset. Within there, we have the ability to create different types of application. Project for the Web by default comes with an application called a model application. This enables us to create data-rich applications that can span across different services, so they can be embedded into Microsoft Teams, they can be used on your desktops, but also they can be used on your mobile phones and your tablets as well. We can extend the default applications that exist from Project for the Web and increase the functionality there through the Power Platform. But we can also create canvas applications and portals that extend that functionality further. So canvas applications can be created to enhance and create pixel perfect experiences for your organization. So this may be creating a submission application, which I have a demonstration of later on today on how you may want to create those pixel perfect experiences. Then we have Power Automate, which enables us to complete automation tasks. So this may be creating project plans based on a pipeline request. and that could include a template. So that project plan has defaulted tasks, it has defaulted assignments. It could be notification-based automation, so you're alerting people that are involved in approval processes and actually managing that approval. And this is one of the key areas for me, because that element of being able to automate and push the information to your users is where the real power can offer business benefit. That can streamline workflows, it can streamline your business operations, and it can make everyone's lives easier. I'm sure everyone's got lots of favorites on their machine trying to get to the right location, whereas wouldn't it be nice if we can just get sent a message in Microsoft Teams that says, could you approve this? And you could do that right then and there within the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. Then we have Power Virtual Agents. So Power Virtual Agents, this is ultimately chatbots. And chatbots can be used to offer that conversational rich experience based on the data that we're capturing throughout our applications. Power Virtual Agents is based upon Power Automate. So the way that we employ intelligence is through creating automation. An example there could be, you may want to ask, the top 5 projects in terms of overspend, and the report could bring that back for you. Or it could be maybe on other services such as a single point of contact solution that is baked into your project offering. And you may ask a question on who is a single point of contact for human resources in the West Midlands. And that technology can pull all the information, all the different data sets that you have, whether or not it sits within the Power Platform, or whether it sits in other services like Excel, like a SharePoint list, like an Access database, or even third-party services like on-premises systems as well. And finally, we have Power Pages, where we can create external-facing websites. So if you're an organization that runs projects and people externally access them, and sorry, they are external facing projects, well, you can create portals that external people can access to obtain information on those projects. So that could be, I want to, as a third party, not involved in your organization, but you're working with, so a supplier potentially could log into a Power Pages portal, and they could go and consume information that is natively being used by your internal members of staff. So those are the different tools that are available to enhance your daily operations. And these can be, and the key benefit here is that they can utilize Dataverse, which is the same storage mechanism as Project for the Web, but they can also use data connectors to other services like SharePoint Online, so that's Project Online included there, or even other tools like OnePlan or Salesforce or any other products that exist. And as I've mentioned, Project for the Web is actually hosted within the Microsoft Power Platform. So I've spoken around some of these technologies already, and this just goes into a little bit more detail in terms of within each of these services, what can we do? So Power Automate, we have various different subcategories. We have cloud flows, desktop flows, and business process flows. So cloud flows enable us to conduct automation based on schedules, based on instantaneous button clicks. So if you wanted to kick off a process manually, then you could do that through a cloud flow, but also based on automatic responses as well. So if you create a new project, you may wish to run an automation. Maybe that is an approval process based on the value of that project, or maybe it is a notification to the person that's been assigned it as a project manager. We have desktop flows that can be used to automatically interact with desktop applications and pull that information out of those and push those into online services. So that could be, there's a process that is run on a regular basis that is Excel, that is based in Excel, so extracting data from a third-party system. Well, the desktop flow could automate the pushing and pulling of that information from that Excel spreadsheet into a online service such as Project for the Web or a Power Platform solution that's offered. Business process flows provide us with a visual representation of a stage-gated process. I can demonstrate what one of those looks like later on today. Then we move into Power BI. So Power BI is split into a few different categories. So first of all, we have the service and desktop. So desktop is the way that you would go and create reports typically. It is a downloadable product that you install onto your machine, and from there you can connect to a variety of different data sources and conduct analysis. Then we have the service. So when you want your users to go and consume those reports, you publish the report to the service. And on the back of that, they can then go and make decisions based on the analysis that has been conducted. Power BI comes in different licensing SKUs, and that can impact the features that you have available. So if you're after a highlight report of a project, then you may look to wish using the premium side of Power BI, which enables you to do paginated reports that ultimately demonstrate your typical highlights, so risks, issues, dependencies, milestones, and give you that interface. Whereas typical Power BI reports are more interactive and they provide data visualizations that interact with one another, whereas paginated reports are more static and more repeatable. There we have Power BI, Power Apps, which I've spoken about already today, so I'm going to just skip over that one. Power Virtual Agents, again, we've spoken about and we'll skip over. And the one that we haven't spoken about is AI Builder. So the ability to implement AI models into our solutions and applications can be really powerful. So one example that I like to give is if you've got a customer or a organization that is geographically spread out, then you may wish to bake in things like translation as an option into some of your services. And to support all of this, Microsoft Copilot is the latest AI-based feature from Microsoft. This is going to be ever-encompassing across the whole Microsoft 365 platform and will enable us to do things like auto-create emails. It will enable us to recommend applications. So you can actually go to the Power Platform and say, I would like an application to do event management, and it will give you a template of what it thinks event management should encompass. So a little bit of a dry subject, but something really important is Power BI licensing. So I just want to just cover really quickly what we have within Microsoft 365, what we have within projects for the web, and then what we have within Power BI and the Power Platform. So first of all, Microsoft 365, you are likely to utilize enterprise licenses or equivalent. So it may be an E1, it may be an A1, 3 or 5, and that will give you access to services such as Outlook, SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, and your Word and Excel and etc. And with that as well, you also get access to Power Automate and Power Apps, utilizing the services that you have within Enterprise Microsoft 365. So you are able to go and create a Power App that connects to a SharePoint list, as an example. And then we look at our project licensing, so project plan 1, 3, or 5, and from there we can interact with the project for the web application set, and that ultimately enables us to go and create more bespoke interfaces and bespoke experiences based on the individual needs for project for the web. Then we have Power BI, so the analytics, or we have Power BI Premium capacity for your tenant. Microsoft 365 E5 does also include a pro license, so if you are at that licensing model already, then you do not need to purchase Power BI typically. Then we have the Power Platform. So the Power Platform, each of the different services are licensed slightly different. So the Power Apps Premium license, that enables you to create additional applications that sit over your project applications, such as Project for the Web, or bespoke applications that you may have created. There are also Power Automate licenses that are available, and those licenses may be used to conduct enterprise automation. So if you have a document approval process, for example, that is applicable to the whole organization, you may wish to license a single Power Automate process rather than a single user. So the key thing here with licensing is that it is very flexible to meet business needs, and it's something that you need to really take a step and understand how best to apply the licensing to meet your business needs. Because, for example, Project Plan 3 will enable you to create custom tables within a Power Platform solution so that you can apply additional functionality and include additional functionality. So just a little bit of a screenshot there around the different features that are enabled with the different project licenses. So if we think about work management and some of the challenges that we have. So ultimately, we all know that work management is done in various different ways. So that could be Microsoft Excel, it could be a combination of third-party tools, it could be project for the web, project online, Microsoft Planner, or it could be too few. Everyone just uses Microsoft Excel. And these create challenges. So either they're not fit for purpose, so they don't have the proper rigor in place, they don't have the appropriate security, or they don't have modern features like being available across different devices, available to be used on the move, or they cannot integrate to one another, and it's very difficult to create, integrated and connected systems. That can then result into challenges with decision making. So if you're using, different tools, or you're using a multitude of different spreadsheets, for example, then it's very difficult to get a clear view on your resource and capacity demand. It's very difficult to understand your pipeline of work because, for every spreadsheet that exists, it's a different pipeline and there's no single view. Or this results in having to manually go away and curate a finalized pipeline. So somebody there is spending time to, aggregate different source data together to present a view back to the appropriate personnel within the organization, which is where manual reporting comes from. And then the key challenge with that is as soon as that report has been made, it is then out of date. So you're always running, with outdated information. Because of this, it can result in poor planning. So we aren't aware of what resources we have across the board. We aren't aware of the capacity of those resources. And that can result in, double booking resources. It can result in not understanding project timelines appropriately. And that's what happens when we have this silo planning, is what we call it. Then we can look at controlling. So how do we, track costs? How do we track, different RAID items from a single project point of view, a portfolio point of view, a program point of view, and even an organization point of view? How do we make sure that we have a single view so that we can review the appropriate work accordingly and ensure that items are being, progressed and mitigated appropriately? And then one of the key elements for me is around governance. How, as a PMO, can you ensure governance? Do you have the appropriate data accuracy? What confidence do you have in the data that is put into the systems that you're using on a daily basis? How do you ensure that the data being inputted from the different users throughout the organization? So, what is the process for a pipeline, an idea being put into the system that then becomes a project of work? How can you ensure that that data is accurate? Where is it coming from? Is it an email? Is it a Teams message? Is it a phone call? What is that process and how is it managed? And how can you ensure that it is consistent so that appropriate analytics can be conducted? That then leads to questions on whether there is a defined process and whether that process can be followed by everybody, and also whether that information can be shared with the various different personas involved in that process. So this is where automation can help. So we've got a little bit of a color coding here. So some are technology based and some are more business based decisions. So things like the tools to use, that is a business decision to go away and understand what is the most appropriate tool to use going forward. Well, if we to take Project for the Web, we know that is a good tool, but it does have some limitations. So everything in terms of pipeline management, comprehensive financial tracking, those features don't necessarily exist in the way that you'd want them to. So we can extend that functionality with Project for the Web. But things like Power Automate can enable us to integrate to different systems. So maybe you're going to decide actually there's two systems that we're going to use in the end. Well, Power Automate and other tools like data flows, Azure Logic Apps can be used to integrate those systems together. Decision making, Power BI and Power Automate can support in providing the appropriate people with information accurately and consistently. And that's one of the key things here, is being able to do the same thing in a repeated fashion. So an example could be there is a pipeline that details projects that are upcoming, and when the user goes and creates that item, they want to categorize it and add the appropriate levels of information. That would then result in a Power BI report that details that. So that's really powerful. Then we have the ability to create applications. So that could be an application that enables anybody in the organization to go and create a risk or an issue against a project. It could be applications that are used to track costs, or it could be applications to manage data input and ensure data integrity and ensure the accuracy of that data. And that may be through integrating with third-party systems. So maybe you want to integrate to your financial system to pull information in to ensure that users are only adding, requests when they have the appropriate interactions with other systems. So it's quite common that organizations have disconnected data, as I've mentioned, and that can be through a combination of different services. So Excel, Project Online, Access databases, SharePoint lists, and that just results in disconnected data and siloed data sources. Typically, then people go away and do this manual aggregation, so they'll move everything into one version of the truth, or what is perceived as one version of the truth, and then they'll go and present that back in PowerPoint and say this is the final picture for this time period. Ultimately, this process here can be completely automated through the modern tool sets that are available. So to jump into some real world examples of how Power Automate can be used. So first of all, we have pipeline management. I've spoken about this a few times, and I do have a application that I'm going to show in a short while, but this is around the automation tools that you may or may wish to look at. So if we go through a standard process, so if you're a business user and you have an idea for a new project and an idea on how you can improve efficiency within the organization, well, how can you do that? Well, first of all, you may wish to create a Microsoft form, and that form can be embedded on the intranet. As you can see here, we've got an intranet called the landing, and the box highlighted in red demonstrates, use this to create a new project request. That then opens up a Microsoft form. This is a very simple solution. And from there, you can select either different items. So what's the project name? What's the type of project priority? And various other metadata items to support that request. This could be extended into a more complex form, which I'm going to show in a moment or two. But on the back of that, that can then be triaged. So it can be sent in to a user or a team that details that pipeline request and whether it should be approved, whether it should be rejected, or whether it needs some further refinement. And once that item has been triaged, then that can be added into the pipeline request phase. And ultimately, from there, that project can be progressed from a pipeline item to a project item. So now what I'm going to do is just jump into a demo of what this could look like as a enhanced piece of work. So this here is an application called Change Gateway. We've got various different elements to this application, such as project requests, Spock requests, pilot requests, focus group requests, and data requests. In today's example, we're going to focus on project requests and Spock requests. As I've been speaking about pipeline management, we're going to jump into a project request. So when we open up this solution, the first thing that we do is we can go in and we can select a project request. From here, I've got two project requests that have already been created. And you can see that we can view items based on the stage. We can view items based on the request date, and all this can be searchable as well. So if I grab in the BCC project, and that will enable me to search. So if I've created lots of different ideas for projects, I can come here and see all the different statuses. When I open up a project or create a new one, I can go in and update the information that I have submitted. You'll see at this point, because this project has already been endorsed by the senior leadership team, I can't actually change it. Whereas for a new project, I can go in and I can update some of this information. Oh, and typical, the demo isn't working. But I can go in and view that request that I've put in. And various things can be done there to review that information and make sure it's all accurate. However, I can still go in and create a new request, and in here we've got an extension of what that Microsoft form did. So we can go in, we can ensure that I'm the change proposer. So this is a new project. I'm going to just put in coffee machines for offices. that's the originating team, apologies. So if we put in CPS Biz Apps, for example, we can put in sponsors, we can type in the different, people that are involved within this, and so on and so forth. And all this data that we're capturing can be customized based on your business needs and your business requirements. Some of these fields are cascading, so based on what you type in, you may or may not see additional fields, and we move through the different stages. So we've got this stage gated process here, and we can go through and ultimately in the detail that we need to. PLC is one of those dynamic fields. So if we've got a flexible project, then please explain that. So this information then gets passed back to the decision makers on whether this project should be progressed or not. We can move into the impact analysis phase where we have organization. So if I just put other, and we can just keep categorizing further down. So let's do that one. And you can do multi-select, as you can imagine, and we can move through all of this different information. Then we grab into the impact assessment stage. So this pipeline request here, a value is calculated that details how complex that project is, and that can be used in terms of the effort to implement, but also the business impact of that project. And these values here can be customized based on what is required, but ultimately this can be used to help generate what that pipeline looks like and the complexity of that pipeline. So we continue through, adding more and more fields, and ultimately we get to a point where we can submit this. So just the last few required fields, I'll just skim through very quickly. I'm hoping that I don't miss something out. And I believe that I can now submit that request. Now that request has been submitted, so that could be anybody in the organization that is able to submit that request. And once it is submitted, we then want to be able to go and review that request. So this request was called coffee machines. So now if I switch it back to somebody within the PMO office or somebody that is empowered to review those requests, they would likely use an application called Project for the Web. This is, and this is an extension of that. So from there we can go in and we can review that request that was just created. We have various different all the data that was passed in, we can ultimately go through and review. But one of the key things here is we have a business process flow of that stage gated, whether or not this request needs more information. We can then move it through if it does not, and from the back of that, if you give it a second to load, we can see whether this has been endorsed, whether it's conditionally endorsed, and again, all of the details that are captured at this point, we can review and we can customize based on the exact business needs. Customized processes can be created to cover that. So that enables us to outsource the creation of pipeline projects or ideas to the organization and then centralize them so that we have a single view of all the requests that are coming in. One of the things that we then do is we then say, well, we want to analyze that information because it's all well and good capturing it, but we want to make sure that we've got that ability to analyze it. And the way that we do that is by creating Power BI reports. So here you will see we've got a Power BI report that shows all of the different projects that have been created. We have various different filters that are available, and from there we can do comprehensive analysis that details where these requests have come from. We can do various different filters, the month, etc., etc. In terms of extending the reporting functionality, we can then look at requests by area. We can do a review of the actual projects. So a project is a request that is converted from a pipeline request, from a project request into an actual project. And once that project has ran, then from the back of there, we can do more comprehensive analysis as there's ability to create tasks against that within Project for the Web. Things like heat maps can be created, so visualizations of all this information based on geographical information that's captured. So where is this project based, etc., etc. So if you're a multi-office if you're in a multi-office environment and would like to do analysis on geographical locator, or if it's more different, if you're servicing customers, you can see that information too. And then we've got various other heat maps that can be displayed at this point. So that is how we can create an application that utilizes various different services to ultimately service your organization as a whole. So various things can be added into these applications, which I'm going to cover now. So we want to make sure that people are populating information in a timely manner, because that's always one of the key challenges, that if you're doing a project review or a project update, status update of a project, then you want to make sure that those status updates are being created. Well, against a project, one way that you can do that is by sending out automation. And that automation could be a message in Microsoft Teams that says, for this project, could you please let us know your current status? And that enables the record to be created that can then be reported on, but the user hasn't had to access the actual application to do that. We are using Power Automate there to populate that record, and that can then just be used to summarize that project update. And these can be extended to cover, other questions such as approvals and, requiring more information. So if a request was rejected, you may wish to obtain more information from the requester, and that could be achieved via a similar process. Rather than a choice option, you could have a text box. So governance and assurance, so extending project for the web further. So you could look at running an approval process, and that approval process is something that could be run against a project. It could be run against the pipeline request. And once that approval runs, the project could then move on to the next stage as it's deemed appropriate based on the approval steps that are required. I just can't use PowerPoint this morning. Then we have project trends and analysis, so automatically capturing information and automatically notifying if your project starts to deteriorate. So if you're suddenly seeing an increase in risks, if you're suddenly seeing, the statuses trending downwards, so if they were all green and suddenly they start to trend down, then automation can be put in place to notify program managers, portfolio managers, that ultimately the project and projects are moving in the wrong direction. Daily task reminders, so keeping team members on task. So if you're assigning work to team members, then you may want to make sure that those team members are working on the appropriate tasks and aren't getting distracted by the 1001 other items they have to work on. And one way to do that is through Project for the Web, the Project for the Web task reminder. This is a template that you can go and create. This uses Power Automate and the Outlook connector, but enables you to send that email to the different people that are assigned to that task. This is an example of that email. So it uses HTML to format it, but within a few Google searches, you can easily go away and customize these emails to display in the appropriate way that you deem necessary. Escalations. So we all know that escalations occur. Nobody wants them to, but we want to make sure that they are managed in the appropriate way. And one way that we can do that is moving things like risks into actual issues. So if a risk becomes a live item, then we can move that to an issue. And that enables us to run, again, automation technology in Power Automate to move something from that risk to an issue. Or it could move it, if you've already created that issue, you can relate multiple risks to it. So if one risk or multiple risks become a single issue, then we can manage that assignment there. Then we have dependency management. So we want to make sure that we want to ensure that everyone's kept in the loop. So do we have dependencies on different projects? And based on that, we can then make sure that when we do updates, that the appropriate projects are alerted. So if you're looking at if you're looking at multiple projects, maybe a installation of hardware or furniture into an office, or you may be dependent on the appropriate teams being available, so the networking team to go and put all the network ports in, but also the furniture team to be there to put the desks in. Well, you can create the dependencies on those projects and alert if there are a delay. So there's no point the networks team going there if the furniture hasn't been fitted, because they won't be able to configure the network connections to the appropriate desks. And we can do that using alerts that could go to email, they can go into Microsoft Teams, they could go into Power BI. It really is limitless. So you can even do things like SMS alerts if that's something that would be required. So then we have, as I said, dependency management. So this is saying that we've got that dependency between two projects. A simple example, using an email to show that alert. One of the key benefits with this platform is that we can integrate into pretty much any service. Whether that's a service that has a native connector or not, we can create custom connectors, and that's really powerful. So whether you've got on-premises systems, whether you've got third-party services or other Microsoft services that are in use, we can pull and push information to those. So one of the key examples that we use quite a lot is integrating with Azure DevOps. So we have a lot of software projects, and we want to make sure that those two services can talk to one another. So I've demonstrated some Power BI reports, but I'm going to just skim over some of these slides to show what more can be done with Power BI. So here we have the ability to visualize the data that we're capturing. So a few example reports here. So we've got a project lifecycle report on the left side and a milestone burn down on the right hand side. So this is across the organization level. So what we're doing here is extrapolating the data up from lots of different projects and displaying that across the board. What we can do is we can apply filters and criteria to filter down what is being displayed, which is one of the powerful things around centralizing all of the data that is